Is your GBP suspended? Do you need to get it reinstated? We've got some tips and tricks in this episode here today on how to do that. Also, how to prevent from getting suspended in the first place. If this problem is something you're facing right now, check this out. Welcome back to Local SEO Tactics, where we bring you tips and tricks to get found online. I'm your host, Jesse Dolan. Got the whole crew together again here today. Bob Brennan,
Hi.
Sue Ginsburg. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Great. Couldn't be better.
Still loving, for those who are listening on audio, definitely jump over to YouTube. You got to check out Bob's background. We got this cool new Local SEO Tactics backdrop that he's got on camera there. Looking snazzy. Good tease for the YouTube there. Sue, we're going to be talking about GBPs today. You want to lead us off with the topic and set us up for exactly what we're getting into?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. Okay. Quote of the day today. Well, the podcast topic today, as you just said, is my GBP got suspended. What do I do? Quote of the day: you can't stop a teacher when they want to do something. They just do it. And even though you think that could be a quote from Google, it's a quote from J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye, classic book that everybody at some age needs to read in school, right? So that's what we'll be talking about today. When a client's GBP, Google Business Profile, is suspended, it's no surprise that I typically get a frantic call or message asking us to look into it and find out why, so it can be reinstated as soon as possible. This is understandable since your GBP is a main window to the world on who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. Unfortunately, it's not all that unusual and not always obvious why Google has suspended a GBP. According to Google, quote, "We may suspend business profiles and user accounts that go against our guidelines," end quote. At a quick glance, Google's guidelines say to 1, avoid prohibited content, 2, reflect your business accurately, and 3, comply with Google's policies. Clearly, each of these has vagueness built into it, which can be very frustrating to interpret. What does Google mean by this? Or what did I do within each of those 3 that they shut me down? Luckily for our clients, they have our team of SEO specialists working on their behalf to figure these things out. And most of the time, we can do that. It's still frustrating, though, and much preferred to not have this happen at all. We just recently had an incident where long-term client, all legit, location, business, photos, services, etc., got her GBP taken down. So we and another of her resources checked into it, looked into everything it could be, and finally, whatever one of the things was, Google turned it back on. We do not want that happening to anybody that we work with or anybody out there, and we understand how frustrating and devastating that can be. So, Jesse and Bob, what can you tell us so we can all learn more about what you can do when your GBP is suspended, and even better, what you can do, as far as you know, so that it doesn't get suspended? What can you tell us?
Hey everyone, sorry to slide on into your show here, but I wanted to share a review that we've got for Local SEO Tactics. And also a reminder, if you have not left us a review yet, we'd love to hear from you. We share your review on the episode, so it's a chance to get a little shout out as well. And more importantly, it lets us know that we're doing a good job, that you enjoy the show, that you're getting some kind of value out of these tactics, and makes us feel good. So here we're going to share a review from Busy Family 4. Review says, "My favorite, exclamation mark. I've looked for SEO podcasts for some time. Local SEO Tactics is by far and away the best out there. You may wonder what I mean by best, quote unquote. They give the best information, answer the best questions, and have the best demeanor. Jesse does not try to sound like a morning show radio host. He presents quality information in a professional and thorough manner. Give this podcast a listen. You will be impressed." I don't know if that was a Freudian slip there. I said pretends. Sorry about that. But Busy Family 4, really appreciate that review. That is what we're hoping to provide for a show, right? Is great questions, great answers, great content. And yeah, not trying to be pretentious or being a radio talk show host, just providing you the information that I and we would want to get ourselves if we were in that space. So really appreciate it. Everybody else, we'd love to hear from you. LocalSEOtactics.com. Click the button for reviews. Thanks. I think first thing, if you have a GBP that gets suspended, Bob, you can agree with this or not as a business owner, is yeah, go get a bottle of wine or a bottle of bourbon or something and probably start
Yeah.
drinking because it's going to suck
Yeah.
until it gets back
Yeah.
up. Yeah, it's horrible when it happens, Sue. And like you said, every day that it's down is just a day you're not getting business. When you're in the map pack and prominent, especially like with a good amount of reviews, right? Which is a huge thing we always talk about. Man, that's just immediate business. And it really does suck, and it's frantic when that goes on. Even if your website is number one in the organic SERPs right under the map pack, and you're still getting some business, you're going to notice that your map pack listing is gone. And before we get into a little bit more detail, I want to mention something. Sue, you mentioned for this client, us and another resource she had. I'll touch on it here as we get into some more bullet points, but she has a Google AdWords, Google representative, right? Not like a third party, but an actual Google person. And one of the things always, because Google is a black hole, which we'll talk more about, like you're saying, if you have an account at Google somehow for something, which usually means you're paying money to Google for some type of advertising, it's not a silver bullet. There's no magic, but definitely always worth reaching out sooner than later to see if you can get some help from this person. Google's a gigantic company, and there's no guarantee, and the odds are probably pretty small that a resource like this could help you out. But it's worth a shot, right? I just wanted to underline that because, I mean, half joking aside, like if your GBP comes down, start drinking or whatever your vice is, because it's going to suck. And so even if there's a low chance something might work, like having your paid ads person somehow be able to help your GBP, which are two completely different parts of Google, it's still worth a shot, right, for this communication. And that also speaks a little bit towards your comments, Sue, about not sure what worked. Yeah, we've tried dozens of things, right? And multiple attempts of reinstatement, which I'll talk about here in a second. And so there's no way for us to know conclusively what was the thing because we tried so many things, and due to the process, you just don't get that feedback. So that's kind of scary. And I just want to start off by talking about all that, right? Like, this is not a fun process to have happen or to go through because it's very messy with Google, right? And that's kind of where I want to start. We've talked about this with other things. A GBP is great, right? It gets you in the ability to get in the map pack. You can get reviews, you can share information, get ranked and everything else, and it's completely free. You don't have to pay for it, right? It's also the downside is when something goes awry like this, because it's free, it's not like Google has just a hotline you can call with a person that's going to answer the phone, right? Tons of automation, tons of forms you got to fill out and process to go through that are fairly ambiguous or not. Well, yeah, just whatever, not giving you the specifics that you want because you don't have that human interaction unless you really get escalated and elevated somehow. And so that can be very frustrating. We always have to remember this is all completely free, though, provided by Google, and maybe cut them a little bit of slack for the black hole that they are. As much as we love to bash Google in these instances, I just think it's always important for people to remember that you're going to have to jump through these hoops. You're going to have to try some stuff, and it's going to be a little bit of a mystery because Google will never tell you what's wrong. So if your GBP is suspended, you're going to get an email, an alert from Google saying that it's taken down. And Sue, you kind of mentioned it, but you'll be told that it violated the guidelines. I won't tell you what area, what thing you did. That's going to be their feedback. And then should mention everybody too, I'm not going to go through all these specifics on the reinstatement form and some things. We have episode 32. We'll link to it in the show notes. Episode 32 was getting your GBP suspended and going through the reinstatement process, right? So there's a very good tutorial, slightly outdated, but still holds up. from episode 32. Check that out. And so what happens is when you get suspended, you'll get an alert from Google, and then there's this reinstatement form you have to fill out, right? That basically says, they ask you a few questions that are kind of double checking that you're operating above board with their guidelines, right? Like, is this a legitimate business, right? Is this your real address? Blah, 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 blah. And then you'll get down to the lower section of that form that it talks about what did you change, and you're then requesting them to reinstate it. And this is an area that, so this would be like the first thing to do, right? If your GBP becomes suspended, this is the process to get it reinstated is using this form. And we're going to talk about some of the tips and tricks to set you up for success here. But the end result, what you're going to do is use this form and submit your request for reinstatement. You have to tell them what you changed. You don't get guidance on what you should have changed, right? You don't get guidance on what was wrong. They just want to know, what did you do to fix it? And that's where the whole black hole starts, Sue, to what you're talking about, right? And that's where it can be a mystery of what was the thing that fixed it. So I'm going to go through a list here of things that typically can get you suspended and things that we always want to make sure we communicate to Google that we did fix or did update, and go through there. These are the kinds of things that should be working. Before we get into that, though, actually, let me pause looking at my notes. I want to talk about a fork in the road, which we've encountered with clients and scenarios before. And that can be, should I reinstate this and keep going through the trouble, or should I try to set up a new GBP? Because again, all jokes aside, yeah, if you're heavily drinking for 2 to 3 weeks because your business is nothing, you get, at some point in time, you're going to start asking that question. Do we, I forget what we always say about like resurrect the dead or give birth, right? Do we want to just set up a new GBP and start from scratch, getting back into the map pack, or do we want to try to resurrect the dead and get this one back? And I would say one big caveat on that too is, if your GBP was ranking really good before and you were truly getting a lot of leads, or if you had a lot of good reviews on there, and a lot from a quantity standpoint would be, Bob, we always target, at or better double your competitors that are showing up as well. If you're close to that for how many reviews you had, that's extremely, extremely valuable. And we definitely want to fight tooth and nail to get it reinstated if that was your scenario, ranking really good and or a great amount of reviews. Because if you set up a new GBP, you're starting over. You don't get to bring those reviews over. You can't tell Google, okay, keep my GBP suspended. Here's my new one. Can you bring all my reviews over? It doesn't work like that. And the reviews are such an important part of human behavior in our decision making, but also for the actual ranking within Google, that you're going to want to go through the effort. So before we start getting into it too deep, yeah, if you have a choice on should I set up a new one or try to get this thing reinstated, try to get it reinstated. To Sue's point, this client that we just went through this with, which we've done many times in the past as well, this is just recent, took a few weeks. We were getting to the point of really starting to worry, is this going to work? Is it going to come back? And somewhere around there, you'll have that threshold and that decision to make for yourself. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer given whatever your timeline is, but don't be quick to restart. Definitely give it a lot of effort to get it reinstated if that's your scenario with the reviews and the rankings. Okay, so back to the reinstatement form. They're looking for you to tell them what you changed. And what does that mean? That means you need to do something to your GBP before you request reinstatement. You can't just get the notice of suspension and then just say, hey, I think you made a mistake. Please reinstate me. You're just going to get shut down. I don't know inside Google's walls if an actual human being reads this form and pushes the button, or if there's some kind of, AI or intelligence based off of, what you're inputting in the decision-making process. Either way, though, the communication you're going to get back from them is always the same. Just either we're happy to let you know you've been reinstated, or your request for reinstatement has been rejected because you don't meet the guidelines. And you can reply back and say, well, can you tell me what guidelines it was? And they just won't. They'll say refer to our guidelines, and they'll bring you to the page that Sue was reading from earlier. So On the reinstatement form, there's something that you should be changing on your GBP, and you need to be very specific about what that is. Don't just say I updated my business name. Say my name was this. I've changed my name to this now. And I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize, Bob told me to put my keyword in the name and now I've changed it, right? Or whatever. So there should be things you're changing on your GBP, and you need to tell them exactly what you did on that reinstatement form. Be specific and play that empathy card. So this, not trying to stir up any controversy, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but one of the things that we found can work is to show them however oppressed or marginalized or whatever the right words are in that space that you are, right? Like if you're a minority owned business, right, or a veteran owned business, or any of these, if you're in your GBP, you have different attributes where you can call out, what your status is in some of those areas. On the reinstatement form, tell them that too. Emphasize that. Hey, this has been down for 3 weeks. I'm a veteran owned business, 2-person shop. This is really crushing us. Please, we've changed our name. We've put it back. We're following the guidelines. Please reinstate us. So that spirit, right? Again, I'm not trying to offend anybody or trying to leverage, something for your benefit there. But the bottom line is you want to let them know that this is impacting your business and it hurts, and that you're being honest and you think you're doing everything the right way, and please get reinstated. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but we always want to bring that empathy and all those different statuses to light, because again, like anything you got to do to get this reinstated, you're going to want to do that. And the sooner you can make these things known, the better. I did mention it, be very specific on the form. Again, what your name was, what it is now. If your address, if you changed it from a street being abbreviated as ST and spell out the word street, be very explicit and specific about everything. Now, what you want to do on your GBP profile is look at anything that's spammy. Business name is a pretty easy area to get suspended with. If Bob's got a plumbing shop, which we always use, for example, or a lot of times, if it's Bob's Plumbing, the business name technically for Google should be Bob's Plumbing. Now, if Bob is in Minneapolis, a common practice is Bob's Minneapolis Plumbing. People will put that as their GBP name because they want the keyword for Minneapolis in there. And I'm not saying not to do that. That can be a great SEO trick, but can also get you suspended. And so if your business name is, having a keyword in there or a geographic reference, and that's not your actual business name, like you can't prove that on a utility statement or your business registration and license, things like that. For the purpose of getting your GBP reinstated, you're going to want to put your actual business name on there in a way that you can back up if challenged. Doesn't mean in 3 months you can't change it and do whatever you want. There's some risk involved with that, but to get it reinstated, that's definitely a key thing, is making sure your business name is your real business name. And the reason that's important, I mentioned maybe utility bill, business certificate, things like that, is when you, and again, I'm not going to go through all the areas that maybe to look at that could trigger suspension. Go back to episode, 32? We talk about a number of those things that are still true today. That was just an example. But you're going to want to make sure that you do everything in a non-spammy way, right? If you have a business description, your services, your products that are in there, just think about everything in your business profile. And were you being super spammy and aggressive? Were you doing things wrong? Just go through everything and double check on it. Change what needs to be changed. Record the granular details of what you're changing and communicate all that on the reinstatement form. Now, there is something that we definitely recommend. And Bob, I want to throw this to you a little bit as a business owner to maybe talk about some of the ways to do this, or if it gets weird for a business. But really, it's your business signage is one of the huge things that can make an impact because it's visual to Google and it's proof. Bob could lease some space in his office out to me, on a handshake or formal deal, and I can boom set up shop there. And I can tell Google that this is where I'm at. Now, instead, if I have a big permanent sign out in front of the building, some legitimate signage, things like that, Google can see that through photos or through video verification. That's a lot harder to spoof than just receiving mail, at an address. So, Bob, I know We work with businesses a lot to, make sure that they have the proper signage, things like that. Instead of trying to manufacture something, are there any nuggets you want to throw in at this point before I?
Yeah. No, I mean, as far as signage, one of the things I was going to throw out there is if your location is street facing, I think you definitely need signage from my experience. However, if your business is in an office park that Google doesn't send its little car out to see the street view, to see what you have or don't have, you may get by with whatever, right? Um, operating your I don't know, pet sitting business inside of your brother's plumbing warehouse or whatever. Um, that's just some of the observations I've seen. If it's a major landmark that you're trying to work out of, it may be more difficult.
That's a great point too. Like the Google Street View, right? If the little car comes
Right.
by and is able to record you, or maybe even you look at your current profile, if you can see your signage, from there too. That's relay that back to Google. So
Is
speaking
there
of signage, go ahead,
is
Sue.
there literally a little Google car that goes around
For,
looking for addresses or?
Hey everyone, just a quick message about our free SEO audit tool on localseotactics.com, and we'll get right back to the show. If you haven't taken advantage of it yet, go on out to localseotactics.com/free SEO audit, or look for the yellow button up in the top right corner, click that. And it's going to take just a couple seconds. You enter in the page that you want to optimize, what you're looking for the audit to score against. Enter in that page, enter in the keyword you're looking to get optimized for, and enter in your email address, click the button, and it's going to take a few seconds, and then it's going to send you off a PDF report via email. It's a great report. It's going to kind of give you an overall score of some vital SEO areas for that page and for your website at large, even though it's auditing this page. That's going to tell you some of the good things that are happening, some of the bad things that are happening too, and give you basically a checklist of some things that you need to shore up and what you can do to improve your SEO for that page, for that keyword that you're auditing. Now you can use this as many times as you want. You can do multiple keywords, multiple pages, multiple keywords on the same page. You can even use this to check against your competitors, right? If you want to do a little reverse engineering, see how they're scoring for a certain keyword, what they may be doing good that you're not, and some things to improve there. So lots of different ways to use it, completely free. Again, go on to localseotactics.com/free SEO audit, or look for the yellow button in the top right corner of the website.
well, it's part of the street view.
Not, yep. Yeah, not to audit this, but as verification and proof. Because again, Google isn't necessarily like as soon as they get your request, they're not like, oh, guys, we got a fresh business request. Everybody take a look at this, right? Like you have to really point out to them why you should be reinstated. And so this is like, yeah, if your business is visible with your sign on Street View, that would definitely be something to point out to Google is like, hey, no, we're here and legitimate. You already took a picture of our sign. Now, if that's not the case, you're going to want to put up some signage. And I would definitely say Bob is spot on here. Like put up your business signage like a real business. We're not putting a sticker in the window or a temporary piece of paper. This is something that would be a legitimate business. Google is not going to honor, that type of signage. They're going to see it as, of course, anybody can go to Kinko's for $10 and throw something up in their window, right? That doesn't mean you're a business. So make it street facing, make it big, make it public, do everything you can, and externally, not internally, wherever possible. To Bob's point, if you're in a business park and you got a suite, even if you just got like the little, marquee, in the big directory, whatever you can do that's legitimate business signage, you're going to want to take pictures of these and you're going to want to load them into your Google business profile. Even though the public may not see those, they may not be shown. They'll be in your profile, in your file, so to speak, and then mention that to Google. So again, like if you have changes in your GBP that you made, change your name. You want to say what it was before. Here's this after. Same thing. I've loaded some photos of our storefront and our signage, and you can see it, in our profile. Like mention that in your listing. And then I mentioned video verification. I just want to talk about that quick. There definitely can be a process where if Google, before they reinstate you, they'll want to do a video verification. And that can mean either you recording a video typically what it is you recording a video and submitting it in the GBP profile. And what they're going to want to look for there is these types of things. I'll give you the examples. Business signage, business certificate, utility statement with your address you're at and your business name that's on your GBP, both visible. You just take a video with your phone, walk around, show these things clearly, like go slow so they can really see it, and show them that these physical things exist to show your business name, to show your address, and that you should be verified and at this location. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just throw up a sign and do a video verification if you have other things that are against Google's guidelines, right? So if you're being malicious, I mean, we're not going to go through all the guidelines, but if you're being malicious or spammy or trickery and just kind of running a business that's shady in a lot of ways against their guidelines, doesn't matter what you're going to do for video verification or for taking pictures of your signs, you're violating the guidelines in other areas. So just take that with a grain of salt. I'm not using that as a silver bullet, but it is something that if you don't have those things for your business, if they're not in your profile, add those in. It's a huge trust signal that we've had success with for businesses. And that's also true, just as an aside for everybody, not just for getting your business reinstated, but just to get it ranked, right? And to get it shown in Google. These are very important things to have in there to showcase your business either way. Okay, a couple other things here. Something that we see a lot is your address. So years ago, people could use like a mailboxes, etc., virtual offices, a lot of different ways to obtain an address. And some of that is still allowed today. That's a whole different topic. But Google can suspend you just off the address you use. During COVID, they kind of loosened up a little bit some of the like WeWork and the co-working spaces to let you set your business up at that address and get registered. It seems like they're starting to tighten that down. So if your address is either a PO box, a virtual office, a shared workspace, any of these types of deals, it may be your address that's tripping you up. Now, if you do a Google search for your address and it shows up on Google as a shared workspace or a virtual office, any of these things, and you're using that, Google can see, right? They can flag it, if you will, that this is a virtual office, which is not going to work for their guidelines. So in some cases, you may have to consider moving your business to a different address. Bob, we always joke about renting a broom closet for a couple $100, but quite literally, if that's what it takes, just think about the amount of business you're losing if your GBP is not showing up. And maybe you were paying a pretty cheap rate at your virtual office, and maybe it's twice that for a broom closet somewhere. But there's a couple things that are going to happen there. One, you're going to use an address that's not a virtual office, which hopefully gets you reinstated. But then two, those places typically have a lot of businesses set up, the virtual offices, the shared workspaces, right? There's a lot of businesses there in a very dense area. Sometimes they're actually the same niche or business category as you are as well. And when we do a Google search, everybody's familiar with hopefully seeing the map pack and the 3 different listings. You're also going to have the like red dots on the map that show where these businesses are. More often than not, almost always, Google is going to pick businesses that are in slightly different proximities, right? If you have a shared office and the 3 best whatever accountants in town are all in that office, whether it be their Google reviews, their reputation, everything else, Google is still going to zoom out that view and show one of them at that office and 2 other ones from different sectors of town, right? Now, depending on the density of your town, those could be miles away or, 100 yards away. But still, one of the arguments for not using a virtual address or a shared working space is you want to get out of where your competitors are, because Google's not going to zoom in super close for that geographic radius when it's showing map pack results. So if you get yourself a broom closet miles down the road or a different chunk of town that you still want to be found in, you're going to have a more secure address, and you're going to be having more ability to pop through in that proximity and get the authority from Google, staying away from all your competitors, right, that are literally next door. So that's a big tip and one of the main things we always look at for a client for the GBP optimization, but then also if something is suspended, all right, what's the address? Do a search in that address. Is it a virtual office? Who else is here? What's going on? Things like that. And then the last spot that I have, this comes into a little bit of your security, I'd say, and maybe management for your business, is your Google business profile itself. Sometimes your listing can get suspended and there was nothing wrong with that listing. It just was the Google account managing the listing. That's going to be one of two things. One, your own account. Maybe you have multiple GBPs, whether you're an agency doing this for other people or whether you're a business with multiple locations. Maybe you have multiple GBPs in your account and there's some spammy tactics or something, really against Google's guidelines on one of those listings. Google sometimes will suspend the entire account, right? So if one bad apple can spoil a bunch, really is kind of the MO there. And so it may not be your actual listing itself. So log into your GBP. If you think this is the case or you want to check, log into your GBP. You'll see a list of all the businesses you manage. See which ones are suspended, which are not, right? If there's multiple that are suspended all of a sudden, then there's probably a wider problem that you got to look at or something on a different property. And I'd say for all this stuff too, disclaimer at Sue, I know you always want to make sure people are aware of this. We can help with this stuff too. Right? So a lot of stuff here talking to Google and the black hole that is Google. But if you want professional help and want to navigate some of this stuff, right, an agency like ours can help. Second part to that for the Google business profile is very similar, but maybe it's not your profile. It can be a profile that somebody else who has access to your GBP. They may be the reason that this is happening, right? So when you have a GBP and you're a business owner, you're the primary owner of that GBP when you set it up. You can give other people access to it where they can be managers, editors, things like this. Now, they may have multiple accounts in their, multiple profiles in their account and be susceptible to the same thing. So if I'm trusting Bob to manage and update, my listing, and Bob has 7 other companies he's doing that for as well. Now my listing is in his account, just like it's in mine, and in his, it'd be joined with those other businesses. And if something happens to one of those businesses in the same way one bad apple spoils the bunch, even though I own this, Bob has delegated access. He's a partner in it, and boom, my business listing can get suspended through Bob's account. So this is something you're going to want to check under the users area for your profile to see who you've given access to. Check with them or kind of follow up that way. If you think there's nothing else wrong, definitely go there. Now, both of these things is something where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Always be aware who has access to your GBP. Even for yourself, what's your username and password? Is it secure, right? You don't want anybody screwing this up for you to create these headaches. And then if you do give somebody some kind of delegated access, just make sure you note that or somehow are aware of that. If you ever part ways or make a change or their project is done, there's no reason to have that continued access. You're just kind of looking for exposure, looking for problems there with that kind of exposure. So
the only other thing I was going to mention too, Jess, is, we have had a client that was in a specific market. And then he had a competitor that was like 40 miles away who registered a GBP in a restaurant. So it was for carpet and flooring, right? So it was obviously an established restaurant that was on a major street. And they literally, Sue, it was like 100 yards from where we had dinner with Joe last month or whatever, right? So they registered it in a restaurant. And this is the thing we call NARC SEO. Look, it's obviously not a flooring store. It's a freaking restaurant. So in my opinion, you have the license to, you can go on their GBP and say and make a comment or register the fact that, and in this case, they took a picture of the restaurant, essentially put it on their GBP and just said, hey, this is a restaurant, not a flooring store. Yeah, I don't know. I think the GBP went away, but there's those kind of shenanigans too. Now, keeping that in mind, if you're doing something that's borderline or whatever, and your competition is, you're taking a position that in that 3-pack that your competition wants, and you're operating something sketchy, and they go out and they may take a picture and quote narc on you. So try to operate as legit and as clean as you can in those situations. So
Back to an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure there, right? Like, best offense here is a good defense. Don't let your GBP get suspended. Be aware of those guidelines. Stay away from, especially when you're talking address manipulation here at the end of the day, whether it's that example, Bob, or virtual offices, things like that. Absolutely something to stay away from.
we don't do this policy, I'm sure, unless it's reflective of the owner of the GBP. We heard this at a seminar, but they registered their GBP as LGBTQ friendly, right? Under the pretense that if they have any problems and they're ever suspended, they're going to play that card. And historically, they have done it, and they've gotten everything reversed like right now. So those are the times we're in, good or bad. And it's just one more strategy. And again, I'm not saying to bend that rule or whatever, but those are the times we're in. And it's a tactic that seemed to have worked for this individual, at least at this seminar that we went to. So
I think that kind of is very parallel to what I was saying earlier too, right? Like if you're legitimately, one of those, different attributes, and you want to flex that, like use a megaphone and let them know, right? And if you want to be a little more risky, and set your business up like that way from the beginning with those tags and attributes, you can go for it. That's totally your call. And if you have them, do like Bob's saying, leverage those on your form. But the reason I want to highlight this too is what you can't do, or I shouldn't say this, what I expect to not work is you get suspended, go in, turn on that you're LGBTQ friendly or veteran owned, whatever, and then say, use that as some kind of way to cry about it. Yeah, good luck with that. These things definitely would need to be set up ahead of time. Total opinion there and some speculation through what we learn and know, but don't try to do that after the fact, or you're just going to slow your process down. Because I guess that's something worth mentioning here too, Bob and Sue, is when you do that reinstatement request form, you click the button and it sends it off to Google, and then you wait. There's no like status pending, or you can kind of see your order moving through a thing. You could take 1 day, 3 days, better part of a week before you hear back from them. And then it's either thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's thumbs down, you just got to do the whole thing over. And this is how it can take weeks to get reinstated, right? It's not an immediate feedback process. So the reason I'm stating that is you don't want to use trickery and manipulation in your reinstatement, because if it's something that's got a low odds of working, again, now you're veteran owned and you're, trying to use that as a point. All you're doing is delaying, what maybe was the real thing, giving yourself 3 to 5 more days now before you heard if that worked. It's not going to work probably. Now back to the drawing board to find out the real thing. So definitely don't try to do trickery after the fact. That would all be manipulations on the front side setup for the example Bob's talking there. So let's see what to do, if your GBP goes down. I think we went through some of the do's and don'ts, highlighting why it's a black hole, Sue, right? Using that term again. And that just is what it is. And you just kind of got to embrace that and even lean into it. But then more importantly, don't get suspended in the first place, I think is probably like the number one takeaway is just be careful, do things the right way. And I guess on that note, I should mention one more thing is sometimes what will get people suspended right now, so here we are, October 2023, just official timestamp. GBPs, I guess I'd call them fragile, right? If you're going in, let's just say right now today, your GBP is fine. You're ranking well, no problems. If you go in and you change your name, your address, or your phone number, we've found those can be very fragile. You can get a suspension and maybe a quick reinstatement, but just almost like a preventative suspension from Google, right? If you manipulate those areas. If you need to manipulate them and change them, do it. But if you need to change, let's say your phone number and your business name, don't do it at the same time. Go in there, maybe edit your phone number today, and next week change your business name. Just use some caution because, again, this is very automated. Google has some kind of formula, some kind of algorithm that, A, B, and C equal business suspension, right? And so you don't want to play with fire there. If you have to make some profile changes that are major, like name, address, phone number type changes, or even if you're a service area or a storefront business, right? Or just some of your primary categories, things like that, make those changes slow, meter them out over days or a week or two, and you should be a lot safer. All right. I think that covers all the bases for everybody. Again, check out episode 32. There's a little bit more in-depth information on there. But between the two episodes, I think we got a good up-to-date. What should you do, Sue?
I have a question. If you are lucky enough that your GBP comes back up quickly or whenever, does it come back up at the bottom of the ranking, or do you come back where you were when it was suspended, or what happens when it comes back up, and what do you do?
That's a good question. It should come back up where you were, quote unquote, respectively. Now, that in and of itself, though, is completely subjective to individual search users, their location, right, things like that. So that's a very broad statement to say it like that. But no, you don't get demoted necessarily, because you were suspended at all. It's literally like an on-off button. So for all intents and purposes, you should come back to where you were before. Now, obviously, there's a ton of variables, right? And if Bob and I are competitive businesses, if I've been suspended for 3 weeks, Bob's been crushing it on his SEO, and he's got 100 reviews in that space. He may then be outranking me, but not because of my suspension, just because he's been crushing it, right? Like those other factors are still moving forward on their own timelines. So asterisks, but yeah, good question.
That's great.
One last quick question, Jess. Is there
Anything else to add?
anything to if somebody, an SE or an agency is taking over and helping you with your GBP, any way to hold them culpable in terms of, hey, they're out of India, nothing wrong with India, but I mean, they're out of somewhere and it's like, yeah, we'll do your SEO for $50 a month or whatever the deal is. And next thing you know, your GBP is suspended. I mean, is there any way to hold them culpable for that, or any cautions you can take for that, or?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think, like, with respect to Google, I don't think there would be, right, or like any kind of recourse there, or any way to do that. So whatever action you take would be like whatever you're comfortable with, or whatever agreements you had with said third party, things like that.
No, and maybe the better phrase way to put it is, can you, before you engage and have an SEO company take over your GBP, is how do you make sure they don't wreck it, or is there I don't know if there's language you could use before they come on that, like, yeah, if it gets suspended, we'll be responsible, or is there insurance? What I mean? You probably don't know about any of that. You get the idea. The spirit of the question is, somebody could really mess up your GBP,
Right. I think that is a great point. Like whatever you want to put into your contract or your service agreement with any third party or vendor would definitely be up to you. Not a bad idea. I don't know that we would, accept or just take some of that as blanket statements. We'd want to maybe go through that with a client.
Yeah.
Like, hey, a lot of things out of our control on this, so you can't put it all on us. So I would say definitely if you can find some middle ground there, though, that would not be a bad idea. But all that I would say would be predicated on, like, explore that company. What kind of tactics are they using? Are they making it sound like this will happen quick? It's easy. We got a lot of SEO tricks, whatever. Here, we're going to change your business name. Like if some of the stuff they're saying they would do would be contrary, and maybe that's what you have to ask too, is like, what are your tactics a little bit?
Yeah.
I would maybe give a little pause there. But if you're using somebody reputable and trusted, and they've got case studies and some reviews of their own and things like this, I would generally hope, that we can have good confidence in most agencies out there. But you bring up a great point though, Bob, that it's a little bit of the wild, wild west for SEO or for any service you're hiring for somebody on. what's their practice, what's their methods, and if they smooch the pooch, they can get your GBP suspended, and then you're gonna have to go through it.
Because I mean, depending on your market, and I mean, let's face it, GBPs can generate 40 to 50% of your leads, and if that's out of the 3-pack and it's gone, I mean, your business is going to get cut in half. So
yeah, that's why we led with the half joke. Like, first thing to do is go get your favorite adult beverage, because might be a long week. Okay. Anything else to add, anybody, or does that wrap it up?
I think that's really good. I will add, if you remember one thing and one thing only, remember this: Google can and will suspend your GBP at any moment if they believe you are doing something that goes against their guidelines. So if you could hear it coming through, shining through what we're all saying, do what you can to not get it taken down in the first place. So, quote of the day again, J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye: you can't stop a teacher when they want to do something, they just do it.
that's a good one.
I wonder if there's a way to flip that around to tell my kids that's why I'm right about things, right? Or like, can we be teachers as parents, right? There's a parallel there.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that was a really good episode. Again, a good update. Piggybacking off of episode 32. For everybody listening, again, emphasize, if your GBP is suspended, if you're having trouble, if you've gone days or weeks and you're still not getting anywhere, feel free to reach out to us, intrix.com or through localseotactics.com. We definitely have the resources to investigate these things, go through all the stuff we're talking today, and hopefully get this rectified for you, because scary situation.
Yep.
If you're going about it yourself, hopefully you learned some things today that you can take care of. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Appreciate it, everybody. Take care.
Bye now.
See ya.
All right, everyone. I hope you got some good action items out of that episode. Never fun to have your GBP suspended. Not kidding about getting a bottle of bourbon or something else to enjoy the ride with, because it can be challenging and frustrating. But hopefully, if you're facing that problem, there's some things that we shared with you here today that can get you on the right track. If not, again, reach out to us. We're here to help, whether you do it yourself or we can do it for you. Either way, appreciate you tuning into this episode. Hopefully you learned some things, and we'll catch you on the next one.